Yeah, I'm really excited to watch this one, where I think they've both been very impressed at this point. I think they're throughout the top cut. If you just look at the names in the bracket, maybe you would have expected both of them to lose some of the matches they've had so far, and they looked very good in those matches. So I think this is a real big breakout moment for both of these trainers, and I'm excited to see who finishes the job.
Last time we saw Carson was in the 2018 season until it came back to 2026 with full force. After getting a top 4 at Las Vegas, he's been able to repeat that result and then some, making it to the finals of the Seattle Regional Championships. On the flip side of things, Sebastian came into Seattle on a whim. As we got a chance to hear from him in one of his winter interviews, he wasn't sure he was going to make it out to Seattle, but was eventually persuaded by some of his friends. And now he, I think, will be happy with his decision to come out here this weekend.
Yeah, I've been really impressed by him, where Carson was so successful in the senior division that this seems kind of just only natural he's done well, but Sebastian's played so well to this point. He's really maneuvered well against some excellent players, and with a team that kind of isn't kind of maybe what you have in mind when you think of kind of positional play, where Rain tends to be very offensively oriented here with the Pelipper and the Urshifu, and I think despite that, he's really done a great job of maneuvering in innovative ways within his games.
And possibly an archetype that a lot of people weren't expecting. When you think about weather that has been successful in Regulation F so far, all eyes have been on sun. But the forecast has called for some rain this weekend in Seattle. I think fitting the bill for where we are in the Pacific Northwest, but it really has thrown a wrench into a lot of players' game plans, not expecting to pace up against our Chaladon. I think the Pelipper as well. Just the fact that it has Tailwind and Wide Guard makes it a huge threat in this meta.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of fun looking at the items on this team as well. Life Orb, Choice Scarf, Choice Specs. I think we've seen a lot of really slow, methodical matches in this format, but both these trainers using really aggressive teams compared to what we've seen in some of the finals of other tournaments this year. Should be a very quick one here, at very least a very explosive one.
I mean, Carson has definitely set some records already at the Seattle Regional Championships. So some of the matches we have seen in our top cut, Carson also playing a very hyper offensive team that can dish out damage just as fast as it can receive it. Let's take a look back on what Carson has been running for this tournament. I think the big standouts have really been the Golden Go and the Regidrago as the two main sources of damage for this team, but that doesn't mean you can scoff at anything else that Carson has.
No, I think all those Pokemon have looked great on stream so far. I love the Ogerpon in particular. It's not a form that we see quite as frequently as either the water or fire type Ogerpon forms, but very good on kind of these more offensive teams, able to both support the team defensively as well as deal a bunch of damage. And I love seeing Golden Go and Regidrago. I think they're both Pokemon that most trainers would say are strong, but not necessarily ones they expected to see a lot of, and we're really getting to see the true potential of these Pokemon in Carson's hands.
Makes it hard to guess, though, what Carson is going to lock into for this match. We've seen all of these Pokemon make an appearance now, but what is he going to use to face up against this Rain team? Very unique here from Sebastian. On Sebastian's side of things, we haven't seen the Archaladon yet. That's been a Pokemon that really has been waiting in the wings. But will it be a Pokemon that can also stand tall to a lot of the Pokemon that Carson has? Only one way to find out, and that's to get into the grand finals of the Seattle Regional Championships. This best of 3 is going to determine a new regional champion in the Masters Division. So let's kick it off. It's going to be the Regidrago and the Urshifu for Carson, and the Archaladon does make an appearance alongside that Pelipper. 4
Pokemon who can really dish out some damage here, so both trainers are going to have to be on their guard right from turn 1. A lot of fun interactions here. One thing to keep in mind, of course, is that Regidrago very famous for that Dragon Energy move. This Pelipper does know Wide Guard as well as Tailwind, so some interesting options here that are available. A lot of different things that could really change what this game state is by turn 2. So we're going to have to see how these trainers choose to take this matchup. If they want to play a little bit more slowly, probably not, given what we've seen from them so far. I wouldn't be shocked if we see some aggressive offense right on this first turn.
And I think this terrestrialization for the Archaladon proves to be the perfect defensive type against this Urshifu and the Regidrago. But it's not going to be Archaladon to be the first to Terra. It's the Urshifu instead for Carson that's going to take on that Steel Terra type, and this Archaladon is going to leave itself to have to take a Dragon Energy because Pelipper didn't use Wide Guard. Pelipper gets brought down with Focus Sash, and the Assault Vest for this Archaladon is going to be able to keep it safe for now, but it's at so low HP that what does this Urshifu decide to do? It just goes for close combat. No Terra is going to save this Pokemon.
Oh, I thought it might use Wide Guard, but instead it left its partner wide open. We see the first knockout of the match.
Knockout for Carson, Archaladon down, but Pelipper still yet to move. Pelipper uses the Tailwind, so Archaladon may not be effective for this match. It might just have opened up an opportunity for a partner.
Yeah, it's going to be really critical now that Sebastian try to play carefully here. That's a lot of offense lost. We're going to see if the Pokemon in the back, as much as perhaps that final Pokemon has surprised us with his offensive prowess throughout this tournament, it really is going to be this Fluttermane that's going to need to deal a lot of damage. Pelipper down to a single hit point, does need to be careful here that Urshifu on the opposing side of the field has Aqua Jet and the Mystic Water item, not a Choice Band or something, so it is threatening damage even though the Tailwind is up and the natural speed of Sebastian's Pokemon will be quicker than the Pokemon on Carson's side of the field.
There's no Protect for this Pelipper and also no Mercy in the face of something like that Urshifu. Regidrago is also feeling the pressure as this Fluttermane across the way is going to threaten a knockout. Golden Go, though, may be a different story, and the Urshifu can also play defense going for a Detect. But is this Golden Go safe? Dazzling Gleam gets locked into by the choice specs here from Sebastian's Fluttermane. It's going to do a nice little bit of damage here to the Golden Go, but it's really about this Pelipper to get some mileage. With the Weather Ball attacking into the Urshifu's Detect, that's going to be a knockout miss and an opportunity missed here for Sebastian.
Yeah, and I love this position for Carson. You know, not only do you get rid of a turn of Tailwind, but this really improves the positioning on the board. Still threatening that Aqua Jet knockout into the Pelipper slot, then has Golden Go matched up with the Fluttermane. Create some interesting situations where you can try and bait that Fluttermane maybe into going into a Shadow Ball into that slot. But if it doesn't, if it tries to make a read that perhaps Carson's going to do something different, you could punish it too. Really important for Sebastian to get this turn right, because even if he does, it's going to be hard not to go down to 2 Pokemon.
White Guard can still neutralize something like a Make It Rain from the Golden Go, but this Pelipper is still in danger of getting knocked out to a single Aqua Jet from the Urshifu. For now, the Fluttermane retreats and knows that it's going to need to keep itself safe to deal with the Regidrago in the future. But Amoonguss may be the savior of the day. We've seen some really impressive things from Amoonguss so far, but the Wide Guard, kind of an interesting choice, maybe expecting Carson to go for the Make It Rain, but the Pelipper is only going to be able to accomplish that as it gets Aqua Jet KO'd and is down for the count. 2 Pokemon left here for Sebastian as this Amoonguss is left by itself, and Golden Go doesn't take the bait. It just goes for the Shadow Ball into this Amoonguss, which would have been a really good amount of damage into that Fluttermane and a safe, nice amount of damage into that Amoonguss switch in.
Now the Fluttermane re-enters the battlefield, but there's just 2 Pokemon remaining on Sebastian's side of the field. You know, the upside of all these choice items, you can deal a lot of damage, but Fluttermane's gonna have to commit to a single move for the remainder of this match, and Carson hasn't lost a single Pokemon yet. The defensive typing is very different with these Pokemon. You need a different move to knock out Regidrago than you do with Golden Go, and Golden Go is just gonna use Protect here to try to scout out what move it is.
Easy Protect for the Golden Go and a secondary Detect for this Urshifu just to scout out that choice specs lock. Amoonguss goes for the Rage Powder. It's not going to help out on this next turn, but it may prove critical for the remainder. Fluttermane walking into the Shadow Ball is definitely going to threaten a KO onto the Golden Go, and nice good damage into that Urshifu. But another side of the coin, Carson has stalled out this Tailwind from Sebastian.
Yeah, it's critical here. Likely, Fluttermane's still going to be the quickest Pokemon, but that's just one more thing not to worry about. And Carson still has that unrevealed Pokemon. Shadow Ball does have good neutral coverage here, where it could do well against all 3 Pokemon we've seen, but really critical situation, and Golden Go wants nothing to do with being hit with that Shadow Ball.
I don't think a lot of these Pokemon would, and this Regidrago certainly doesn't either. There's no way to actually change away from any of these types left, because you see that Carson has already invested that Terra into the Urshifu. So Shadow Ball from Fluttermane is good. It's going to attack into the Regidrago, bring it down quite low, and the Surging Strikes from this Urshifu. Attacking into the Amoonguss is also going to see some residual damage right back from the Rocky Helmet. A third Surging Strike is going to bring this Amoonguss down quite low, but will not be quite enough to actually knock out this Amoonguss from here.
Yeah, so with this Fluttermane also only able to use single target attacks here, we're not going to see the Dazzling Gleam that we've sometimes seen because of the choice lock. So this matters a lot. Even though one of these 2 Pokemon will probably get knocked out this turn, the other one can pick up the knockout in Amoonguss and lead the team into a situation where it's a 1v3 against a Pokemon that can only use single target attacks. Looking really good for Carson in this first game.
Still going to try his best. Sebastian locks in the Protect. Going to keep it safe from the Regidrago single target attacks as Fluttermane is able to pick up this Urshifu. We're going to bring Carson down 1 Pokemon, but still with 3 remaining. It's an uphill battle for Sebastian.
This is the one path that potentially lets Sebastian get out of his turn with 2 Pokemon. We'll have to see what Regidrago opted to target.
Regidrago's going to go for the Earth Power, and it was after the Amoonguss. A lot of our players have noticed that Amoonguss, when left unattended, can really start to get out of hand, especially with the protection that it provides with the Rage Powders but that's not going to help against this Whimsicott.
Oh, and this looks great now, where the knockout would have been nicer, but now in a situation where Tailwind can allow Golden Go later to become the fastest Pokemon on the field, perhaps Regidrago to knock out this Amoonguss before Fluttermane can move. Tailwind going up, no protect from the Amoonguss. It looks like Carson could take this one in just a couple more turns.
Regidrago gets to move next with the Earth Power. It's a knockout into the Amoonguss, but that means this Fluttermane is going to have to pick up a lot of work. There are 3 Pokemon left, but Fluttermane can deal with just one of them. As you see the Shadow Ball get unleashed into the Regidrago, that's going to be good for the knockout, but this Golden Go gets to come back in with that Tailwind active.
Yeah, it matters so much. These 2 Ghost-type Pokemon are going to do so much damage to one another, although it'll probably actually be that Make It Rain from Golden Go to close out this first game. Carson took an early lead and just such a great job of getting to this point. Really good job of making sure he didn't make any unnecessary mistakes to cough up that lead.
Moonblast from the Whimsicott into the Fluttermane brings it down low enough with that critical hit as Salt in the Wound. As Golden Go makes it rain, Carson wins game 1 of this finals.
Exciting first game there. This is going so quick compared to some of the matches in this set, but both trainers able to keep up the tempo. A very exciting first game. Carson kind of got the early advantage there and just able to push it all the way through. He made a great read early in the game to put himself ahead and just did the right thing. He saw the way through this game. I think it's very difficult to read these games sometimes with these offensive teams where if you make one mistake, it can really change things. But it's a very clean game. Correctly calling this first turn that there would be no wide guard, picking up the knockout on Jalodon and almost knocking out Pelipper as well.
No terrestrialization also spelled disaster, as this Shalodon might have stood a chance against that double target. But it is a 50-50 coin flip. You really have to predict correctly against these hyper-offensive teams what they're going to lead and also what they're going to do on that first turn.
Yeah, I think the fun of these matchups, like sometimes the more defensive teams, the game feels like a puzzle, right? Okay, what do I do so I can get my opponent 7 turns from now to do what I want them to do? With these teams matching up against one another, it's a little different. What is my opponent going to do this one turn? And if I don't get it right, I might not be able to pull my way back in. I do think it's still really impressive that Carson did such a good job of holding on to the lead. That second turn was almost as impressive as the first to me, where getting rid of that first turn of Tailwind while also improving his board state was just so big. And at that point, it was just insurmountable advantage.
Especially when a lot of your damage ends up being safe into whatever ends up switching in. I like that the puzzle sometimes just becomes, can you get the triangle into the circle hole? And sometimes that is good enough. For now, in this best of 3, Carson is going to lead the game series 1-0. But Sebastian has played quite a few 3-game sets across this top cut, so he is not out of it yet. Let's see what adjustments await us as we get ready to go for game 2 of the Masters Finals here at the Seattle Regional Championships. Our Jalodon was not as impressive as we might have expected to see here from this Rain team. And as we load into game 2, it's going to be Urshifu next to the Whimsicott, and Sebastian has made a pretty big adjustment to bring in Qianpao next to Amoonguss.
Yeah, huge changes for both sides here. Worth noting, we've seen this Urshifu terrestrialize a few times. That is the steel type on Carson's Urshifu, not the grass that we had seen some other players, which would make this situation a little bit more dangerous for Sebastian. Amoonguss potentially going to do a pretty good job of controlling the field here. Carson does have the option of tailwinding here, but kind of not much point because Amoonguss is the one that is kind of controlling the field, and we're going to see Urshifu leave battle here, realizing it can't get too much done. Instead, the Golden Go coming in, that MVP of the previous game.
Golden Go was great for those Make It Rains to solidify the lock-in for Carson. But the Golden Go is going to serve a dual purpose. If you were worried about the Amoonguss going for Spore into the Urshifu slot, good as gold will keep it safe. Carson lets loose a Tailwind with the Whimsicott, and that's going to be all it accomplishes in this game 2 as it gets knocked out and returned by the Ice Spinner from this Qianpao.
Well, that creates a really interesting situation. I think it's a big knockout where attacking the Golden Go slot would have been a huge mistake. I think if they still have a passive board state, it would have been easy for Golden Go just to go for a nasty plot there. The Qianpao has 2 Ice-type attacks it would resist, and then Sucker Punch, which only works if it's attacking. Instead, because Whimsicott is knocked out and gets that Tailwind active, Carson's kind of got to go, which sort of encourages him to attack here. You got 2 powerful spread move options with the Make It Rain and the Dragon Energy, which are very likely to 2-hit KO almost every Pokemon on Sebastian's team. So potentially needing to decide who to sacrifice, who to use Protect on, how to start weakening these Pokemon, because there's going to be an onslaught throughout this Tailwind.
There's one one good spore target on Carson's team, and that is going to be the Regidrago. Now, the problem here is that you are not in a comfortable spot if you're Sebastian. And that's why we're going to see the Amoonguss think better of going for a spore and just opt to wait for later on in this game. Can Urshifu now pick up the pace for Sebastian as a switch in or a sacrifice? As we now see a terrestrialization spent on Carson's side. The Terra Dragon gonna be quite nice here. In case you saw a Sucker Punch come that way, that would be the only way that the Chien-Pao can bypass the speed advantage that Carson has right now. But Chien-Pao goes for Protect. It needs to be a passive turn because Sebastian has to get through this onslaught of attacks. Draco Meteor first into the Urshifu is just a one-hit knockout. Regidrago has to drop its special attack by 2 stages in the process, but getting at least one Pokemon KO to even up the count may be good enough while you still have another that can switch into its place to shed those special attack drops. As the Make It Rain and not hitting a target will also keep this Golden Go from having to drop its own special attack stat.
That leaves us in a very interesting situation now. Pelipper going to get out into the battlefield. I don't think it's going to make the same decision it did that previous game by not using Wide Guard. Eventually able to check the Golden Go very nicely here. Regidrago has reduced its special attack, and Golden Go, if it tries not to use Make It Rain, would then be stuck using Shadow Ball against these Pokemon. Could do a lot to that Pelipper, but Chien-Pao resists that. Not the most defensively apt Pokemon in the format, but able to take that and respond in kind. Also, both these Pokemon are now pure Dragon-type Pokemon, not going to want to take those Ice-type attacks from Chien-Pao. So things look real bad for Sebastian there, but he's done a good job of pulling this back without really giving too much up. And hey, this time there's only 2 turns of Carson's Tailwind left.
2 more turns to get through, and a couple Protects might be able to help you out here. Also, what's going to be nice about this is that the Ice Shard is another priority attack that this Chien-Pao has access to. So if you didn't want to just wait through it with the Protects, you do have those priority options to weave past that. Chien-Pao is ready to go. The Stellar Terra is going to boost up the damage of both a Sucker Punch or one of the Ice-type attacks, even for just a little bit, as Pelipper is going to use that Wide Guard. You do not want to face down a Dragon Energy or a Make It Rain, as Chien-Pao is going to move first with the Ice Shard. Priority Ice Shard to the Regidrago is going to be good for the knockout, and that's another threat down. Carson is down to just 2 Pokemon remaining, but this Golden Go could still get some work done. Because it's holding the Metal Coat, it can select a different move, and it does go for the Shadow Ball into the Pelipper instead.
Poor Pelipper just can't seem to get that read, but that's still a good turn for Sebastian there. Getting rid of a single turn of the Tailwind as well as picking up that knockout. That Terrestrialization really was stellar. That's a ton of damage from such a low base power move, and now only having 1 more turn of this to go. Urshifu entering the battle, though, making it a little bit harder to stall that out, right? Pelipper can't protect anyway, does not know that move, and Wide Guard not going to help it against any potential Aqua Jets. But hey, if we see that, that would again leave this Chien-Pao available to try to do something. So a situation for Sebastian to make a read. Which of these 2 Pokemon is Urshifu going to try to burn down with this last turn of Tailwind? Because whichever one is getting it isn't going to be able to protect because of that Unseen Fist anyway.
Chien-Pao using the Stellar Terrestrialization to boost up the Ice Shard means that it doesn't have that Stellar Terra boost to boost it up again. That same trick may not work twice to get the knockout onto the Golden Go. So for now, Chien-Pao is going to say goodbye and allow Amoonguss to take its spot. The Shadow Ball is going to get redirected into that slot, and Amoonguss does not take that as comfortably as you might think. As the Surging Strikes finishes off the Pelipper instead. Great targeting by Carson to not let his own Urshifu get that Rocky Helmet recoil.
Yeah, get some nice damage on the board, and Tailwind is gone, but Sebastian now not going to be able to match that Tailwind with his own Tailwind setter being defeated, and Chien-Pao re-entering the battlefield. As you noted, already spent the Ice-type half of that Stellar Terrestrialization, can still get a damage boost on a Dark-type Sucker Punch if it wants to go for it, but there's some mind games there too. Again, it's Metal Coat, not a choice item or something, so Golden Go could try to bait out a Sucker Punch using Nasty Plot. That Urshifu is already going to resist any attacks from this Chien-Pao as a Water and Fighting type Pokemon.
The Golden Go goes for the Protect. Ice Spinner would still do a lot of damage without that Stellar Terra boost, as Amoonguss is going to draw attention away from this Chien-Pao and hopefully keep it safe from another attack. But Chien-Pao isn't able to land any damage onto Carson's Pokemon. The Protect was good to keep this Golden Go around for the next turn, as the Surging Strikes has to start whittling away at this Amoonguss one way or another. So that's going to be 1, 2. Oh, the third one looks like it's going to be quite close, as Carson's Urshifu does get Rocky Helmet recoil. The third one is enough for the knockout, and that opens up a huge window for Carson to take this game and take this set.
Oh, that was such a big knockout. It was so close to surviving that, but because it doesn't, it can't redirect any attacks to the next turn. Chen Pao only has single target attacks. Is going to have to pick one of these two Pokemon to try to defeat, and I think the other one might have this regional championships in the bag.
Chen Pao goes for Ice Spinner, the first to move, gets chance to knock out the Golden Go, but the Urshifu can attack, and I think Carson knows that this regional championship is about to be his. This has been a long time coming. Carson got top 4 at the Vegas Regional Championships, gets to repeat that and then some now. Congratulations to Carson, your Seattle Regional Champion!
What an incredible match. That pace was just absolutely blistering the whole way through. Neither side could afford to make any errors there with how quick that went. And Carson just won such an impressive series of matches here. Not just this finals, but his whole top cut run. I feel like the whole thing may only have lasted about 15 turns, where his opponents just couldn't handle the offense from his team. What a great team choice, and what a great job of piloting this team. Just no one seemed to have an answer for what he brought to this tournament. A very deserving regional champion.